Back with our focus on the upcoming city election. At-large seat A, Lynne Fugate holds that seat. There are two challengers in this election. The top two vote getters move on. Susan?
Well, I want to ask about Knoxville Police Department. There's a couple of weeks ago, their number 2 person, Brooklyn Belt, left. I think unexpectedly, although Paul Noel said that he didn't expect her to be there very long. But I think a lot of people were surprised about that and didn't feel like there'd been any transparency about that. There was also some issues in his hiring with transparency in the police department and with the mayor's office. So, Lynne, I'll start with you. Where are you with that? Do we have enough transparency in the police department of the city?
Well, transparency is a great thing, and I always think we could have more. I think for the deputy chief who left, I think what he meant by not long is she was a very well-qualified woman with lots of things to do who came in. Probably this wasn't going to be her long-term career choice. I don't know why she left as quickly as she did. And as for the search for the police chief, I may have a little different opinion on this. It is a mayoral appointment, and the mayor doesn't have to do a transparent search. In the history of the city of Knoxville, the mayors just picked who they wanted to be police chief. So I do commend the mayor for being as public as she was by listening to people, talking about what they wanted, and considering that in a search. Also, as an executive who has been recruited away from a job, sometimes you will limit your pool if it's going to get public. So I think it's a very fine line to dance. I'm not saying it's perfect, but more transparency in policing is always better.
I want to bring in Cameron just so we get a part of the conversation to Susan's question. Hopefully you heard it about the police chief and the abrupt resignation of Brooklyn Belt.
Yeah, I've been a little bit frustrated with this council for not being critical of the administration on many different things. Not to be critical just for the sake of being critical, but on important things, on like shining sunshine into these processes. I think the public expects more, and we need to be, when the mayor is not being transparent in her hiring processes, we need to be critical of that.
To Lynn's point, Cameron, I want to hit on what Lynne said. And she was saying you really limit your talent pool if you are public about everything. What do you make of that perspective? Is that something you would consider, or would you dismiss that idea?
I would dismiss it because I've heard many other cities in this country have successfully recruited people to these positions with having an open and transparent process. I think that's just an excuse to justify the lack of transparency.
Okay. Mr. Worsham, your take on Susan's question.
No, I agree with Lynne. I think she hit it right on the head.
Okay.
Let me interject one thing about that, and then I'll ask my question. And that is, what is a little bit different about this search was that the mayor was interested in getting somebody from outside the city of Knoxville. So we typically have sort of promoted from within. That's kind of an idea that we've had for a long time, and it is something that typically the police department has liked. So we went outside, and that raised some questions about how that was done. Now, let me move on to my question, if I may. You sort of alluded to it. Sorry, I saw it on your cheat sheet, but I was going to ask it anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
Talking about sort of big projects that the city should or should not get involved in. One that we know is being entertained and is kind of a big ask for the city of Knoxville is this idea of a pedestrian bridge that would link UT across Fort Loudon Lake to South Knoxville. The state has ponied up some money, but the Fed said no most recently. The estimated price is $70 million. I'm not confident that's going to sit on 70. I would imagine it'll go much higher than that.
Bid, yeah.
It's opening and add another $20 million and you might get close. So here's my question, and I'll start with you, Mr. Worsham. Do you support an idea like that bridge, or do you think that's something we ought to just give up now and then we'll go on to the other candidates?
No, I don't support it. I think we should kibosh that right off the bat. Taxpayers' money. they're not going to fund it. They've already said they're not. There's, I think, was $20 billion that's already saved up for it to start. But, I mean, $70 million is not going to get it, and that's a want instead of a need, like we was talking earlier.
Ms. Fugate, you have obviously you've been involved in this kind of decision making and discussions. What do you think? Fed said, sorry, we're not giving you that 25 mil or so. That puts a lot more right now, anyway, on the city of Knoxville.
Well, it's clear it won't be happening soon.
Right.
And it has been talked about for over 25 years because it came about in 9 Counties One Vision when I was the director of 9 Counties One Vision. It came out of a community visioning session that talked about we need to connect UT across the river, join South Knoxville with a pedestrian bridge. The only way we have to get across is by vehicle or a motorized vehicle
Right.
or a very tiny, thin bike lane on Gay Street.
And I think there's a sidewalk.
Yes,
on
there,
that bridge
yes,
as
there
well.
is
Or a boat.
on Gay Street. But I mean, so the conversation has been going on in this community for 20 years. This is not going to be a quick fix. It was talked about again in the South Knoxville waterfront visioning process in 2016. That's why it got in the plan. I do think UT is landlocked. It behooves them if they would like to help access to that to help come up with some funding. It's not the city's responsibility to do it all, but I do think it's worth continuing to think and dream about.
Cameron, your take on that pedestrian bridge that John North pointed out. The Fed said at this point, we're not going to give you money for it.
I'm opposed to that bridge. I don't think the people in South Knoxville want it. From talking to them, Debbie Helsley running for seat B, who lives in South Knoxville, she said the same thing. We've already wasted $150,000 on grant writers that we paid for. When my question is there no one on the city staff that could have written that grant? And my final thing I would say about the bridge is UT should pay for it because they principally benefit from it. We keep spending money on all these little side projects, and then a tax increase is just inevitable to pay for it all, and it's a luxury. This is not something that we need. When working families are struggling with having to pay higher prices, they shouldn't be bearing the burden of these luxury items.
All right, Cameron, thanks very much for that perspective. We're going to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more from our candidates for the at-large seat A in the upcoming primary election for City Council.